For a number of hours every 6 years, Filipinos get a chance to chart their future by electing leaders to more than 18,000 positions, including the president. The Filipino votes on this big day. More than 65 million voters making their voices heard by one shade on the ballot and making a stand for a better life emerging from the health and economic crisis and against corruption, crime, illegal drugs, and many more. On this day that will go down in history, the future of the country is at stake. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes 2022.
Good afternoon, I'm Pinky Webb. Join me in the next few hours as we continue to give you live and in-depth coverage of this year's national and local elections. It's been 8 hours since polling precincts opened today. Filipinos are choosing the country's next set of leaders, from president, vice president, 12 senators, 316 members of the House of Representatives, including 63 party list members, and about 18,000 local positions. 10 are vying for the highest office of the land, 9 for the vice presidency. Our news teams are in full force covering the candidates and the electoral process. Our AC Nichols is in PPCRV's command center in UST Manila. Senior correspondent Anjo Alemario is in Camarines Sur for Lenny Robredo. Melissa Lopez stands by at the PICC, while George Cahiles is monitoring election activities in Cavite. We also have Tristan Nadalo in Quezon City. Our Amer Santos is also in UST Manila. Rex Remigio will give updates from the Uniteam campaign in Mandaluyong. Paulo Barcelon is in Manila for Isko Moreno. Our senior correspondent David Santos is in Davao to cover the Duterte family. In Cebu, we have Caroline Bonquin. In Sarangani, Zian Arcangel. In Rizal Province, Chrissy de Matulac is covering Leody de Guzman. Stanley Gahete is in Manila. Senior correspondent Lois Calderon in Ilocos Norte to cover Bongbong Marcos's family. And we have Paige Javier in Laguna. All presidential candidates have cast their votes. We were able to cover 6 of them. Presidential candidate and Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson was one of the early birds who cast his vote around 7 this morning. We now talk to our CNN correspondent, George Cahiles. George.
Well, Pinky, it was a quick 6-minute voting process for presidential candidate Senator Ping Lacson earlier. He arrived here at the Bayan Luma 1 Elementary School before 7 in the morning. He granted a quick interview before entering his precinct. He was prioritized since he is a senior citizen. Wala siyang kodigo, memorize daw niya ang mga kailangan niyang iboto. When asked about the senators he voted for, Lacson said he didn't vote for full 12 senators. Lacson said he felt relieved after voting, relieved because they were able to finish the campaign in good health. After voting, his plan for today, Pinky, is just to watch shows on Netflix. While he seemed very relaxed, the presidential candidate says he's still optimistic that he'll win. But whatever the results will be, he is ready to accept it. Lacson's message to fellow presidential hopefuls: whoever wins, he or she must forget about all animosities, bitterness, and hatred brought about by the campaign. Lacson says the next leader of the country must be a leader for all Filipinos. Back to you.
Thanks a lot. George Cahiles reporting from Cavite. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno submitted his ballot earlier today in Magat Salamat Elementary School in Tondo in Manila. Our correspondent, Paulo Barcelon, tells us more. Paulo, go ahead.
Pinky, good afternoon. Mayor Moreno received what appears to be a VIP treatment as he entered Magat Salamat Elementary School around 11:20 this morning. He stayed for around 15 to 20 minutes, went up straight to the third floor polling precinct where he cast his ballot. But along the way, Pinky, he was greeted by voters in line as well as people who just wanted to see a glimpse of the Manila mayor. His voting process wasn't really that long, and he thanked those who, or the voters who would choose him, and he promised that if he is elected, he will not disappoint those who voted for him. He was asked a question earlier about how he would deal with the incident of vote counting machines that are breaking down. He urged Filipinos to, quote, "Tsagain natin," to stay the course and just participate in the electoral process. As for his plans, Pinky, he says he intends to go back to City Hall for some work, and then he plans to spend the rest of the day with his family in order. And he left instructions to Acción Democrático, his political party, to monitor the outcome of the counting of the elections. Pinky.
Thanks a lot. Paolo Barcelon reporting from Manila. Let's head out to Batak City, the bailiwick of former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Joining us on the line, our senior correspondent, Lois Calderon. Lois, go ahead.
Pinky, former Senator Bongbong Marcos has reached the finish line of his presidential bid. He arrived here at the Mariano Marcos Memorial Elementary School to cast his vote a little over an hour after this polling precinct opened at 6 a.m. This is his father's hometown, Batak, in Ilocos Norte, the bailiwick of the Marcos family that's expected to deliver about 36,000 votes as per COMELEC. That's just Batak alone. With Marcos was his son, Sandro, but the latter did not cast his vote because Sandro was registered in Lawag City, 1st District, where he is running for a congressional seat. This school has a security perimeter of 30 to 50 meters for non-voters. Journalists are boxed out. So it was kind of tough to get near Marcos for an interview. The only question that he entered in it, that he answered, was that, "Kumusta po yung pagboto nyo?" And then he said, "Maayos naman, maayos naman." But as you saw in the live footage we had earlier as the events unfolded, Marcos was whisked away by his security to the classroom, and through that, to the jalousie windows, we journalists filmed the 15 minutes Marcos lingered in the polling precinct. But it's not just us watching Marcos. I was beside this middle-aged woman who squeezed in, saying she wanted to see him. And then there was this 70-year-old lady who even tried to climb through the fence to get a glimpse of Marcos. So that's the kind of support we saw here from Batak. And then he made his way through the crowd, and we still tried to get him before he boarded and joined his convoy. Now, former First Lady Imelda Marcos arrived a few minutes after her son left. She was wearing a red Filipiniana gown. She also had an aide as she walked slowly across the lobby to the polling place, the same precinct where her son cast his vote. Pinky, what we know is that Marcos already left Ilocos Norte and arrived there in Manila, and his headquarters in Mandaluyong City shortly after noon. Pinky?
Thanks a lot, Lois Calderon. From Ilocos Norte, we now go to Cainta, Rizal, where labor leader and presidential bet Calyodi de Guzman went to the polls. Let's talk to Chrissy de Matula. Chrissy, go ahead. We'll speak to Chrissy a little while regarding Calyodi de Guzman's voting. I think she's back on the line. Chrissy, go ahead, please. Chrissy? Okay, Chrissy is supposed to be reporting to us from Cainta, Rizal, kung saan po bumoto si Calyodi de Guzman kaninang umaga. That happened before lunchtime, and let's find out from Chrissy a little later on how that went. I did see na nagbigay din ng panayam si Calyodi sa mga media na nag-cover po sa kanya sa Cainta. Let's go to, si Senator Manny Pacquiao. He voted in Sarangani Province. Our Zian Arcangel is there. Zian, go ahead.
Senator Manny Pacquiao stayed just under 30 minutes at Kiamba Central Elementary School this morning to vote. Upon arrival, Pacquiao headed straight to his voting precinct and did not anymore fall in line. Pacquiao spent around 16 minutes shading his ballot. After this, he fed the ballot into the vote counting machine, and his forefinger was marked with indelible ink. Pacquiao said that he just prayed this morning before going to Sarangani from General Santos City. He believes that the will of the voters, particularly the poor, will be evident in this coming election. Pacquiao says he plans to spend the next few hours and possibly even days at his home in General Santos City while waiting for the results of the election. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Zian Arcangel. Let's go back to Chrissy de Matulac. She covered Calyodi de Guzman when he voted before noon today. Chrissy?
Yes, Vicky. Presidential candidate and leader Yodi de Guzman arrived at the Cainta Elementary School in Rizal in high spirits. He was with his family and some members of the Partido Lakas Masa. Before de Guzman casted his vote, he said that his campaign was a success, and regardless of the results, will continue to fight for the rights of the workers. He said he will be satisfied with whatever the turnout is, since this is his first time to run for president. He got in one of the classrooms and was able to cast his vote at around 7:30 in the morning. We also talked to his wife, Marieta, who said that they were not nervous the night before the elections. She simply said that the Guzman family is proud of their patriarch and the journey that she went through. After the elections, the Guzman family said they were on their way to brunch to celebrate the end of a long campaign period. The Guzman's running mate, Juan Bello, also casted his vote at the Julio Rodriguez High in Quezon. Back to you, Pinky.
Thanks a lot, Chrissy de Matulac. The Commission on Elections had a media briefing earlier. Melissa Lopez joins us from the PICC. Mel, what's the update from the COMELEC?
That's right, Pinky. COMELEC has reported 143 defective vote counting machines and 124 SD cards needing replacement and reprogramming so far in this today, our election day. Overall, COMELEC received over 800 reports of malfunctioning VCMs, but most of these are minor cases. So these include problems in power source, only to find out that the machine was not plugged in into the outlet properly, or some faulty rollers and scanners. This is relatively small compared to the 108,000 vote counting machines available nationwide and against 1,900 backup machines on standby. Now, as a voter, you have two options. If the machine in your precinct conks out, you can either stand by to wait for the machine to be repaired, or if it would take too long, you can sign a waiver so that you can turn over your ballot to the electoral board so that they will feed the ballot for you in a batch after the voting period once the VCM is repaired. Pinky.
Mel, let's talk about that again, because there have been a number of reports from different precincts kung saan ayaw kasi nung ilang botante na hindi sila yung magpasok ng kanilang balota doon sa vote counting machine. Mabuti na ipinaliwanag mo sa amin yan because meron nga silang dalawang options. Uulitin ko lang yung sinabi ni Mel kanina. Sabi ni Mel, either you fill up your ballot, kasi na-fill up mo na yung iyong balota, but the only thing you can do is to sign a waiver and let the board, election board, be the ones to feed your ballot to the vote counting machine. And besides, if you look at also some suggestions on Twitter from some people, meron naman kasi daw din dong mga watchers na pwede ring daw magbantay para sa inyo. That's the first option, Mel. Now, the second option would also be you wait, you don't vote, wag munang i-shade, wag munang kunin yung mga balota, at hintayin nyo until the VCM is working, because if you are intent on the one feeding that ballot to the machine, you're going to have to wait until the VCMs are working. Mel, so yun pa, what other suggestions did or advice did the COMELEC give para dun sa mga botante? Because it's still open. The polling precincts are still open until 7 p.m. tonight.
Right, Pinky, that is an option. Actually, those two are options, but COMELEC actually encourages that you'd rather turn over your ballot for safekeeping. It should be kept in a separate envelope anyway, since the problem with waiting for the VCM to be repaired is maiipon yung tao, and it could actually run counter to the social distancing protocols that COMELEC is trying so hard to maintain now that we are having elections in the middle of the pandemic.
All right. So yes, really the suggestion is you entrust it to the election board and to the watchers there, because you don't want more people in the polling precincts. As mentioned over and over again, Mel, di ba, there are only more or less 10 voters that are allowed in a particular polling precinct. All right, thanks a lot. Melissa Lopez there reporting. The Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting will monitor election results from the University of Santo Tomas. AC Nichols joins us now from Manila. AC, what's happening there now?
Pinky, vote counting machines that are not working and names missing from voters list are the most reported concerns or issues to the PPCRV call center in the first few hours of voting. And the church-based groups, poll watchers on the ground, are giving the same feedback as well. PPCRV urges voters, do not give up your ballots.
AC, go ahead.
Well, we're supposed to be playing a soundbite from PPCRV Chairman Myla Villanueva. I'm not sure what happened there, but let me just read what she said earlier. No? She said, kung mahihintay po ninyo, baka maaaring maghintay kayo. Kung merong PPCRV volunteers doon sa polling precincts at kung nasa mga guru na yung mga balota, ay bantayan po ninyo muna hanggang masubo sa VCM. So this is running counter to what the COMELEC is saying, na ini-encourage na lang nila yung mga tao to entrust. No? The PPCRV naman is saying na if you can wait, if the voters can wait, then they are urging the voters na maghintay na lang muna so they can para sila yung magpapasok talaga ng mga balota nila doon sa vote counting machines. Myla Villanueva, the chairman of PPCRV, made the rounds earlier today in various polling centers around Metro Manila, and she also directed PPCRV watchers and volunteers in precincts with failing VCMs to secure the ballots. In the meantime, Manila Archbishop Jose Cardinal Advincula will hold a mass here at the PPCRV Command Center at 6 p.m. tonight. And that's also around the same time we're expecting volunteers to start to come in, as the PPCRV parallel count will begin soon after precincts close. And the results are transmitted from the VCMs to COMELEC servers. Now, aside from the quick count, the PPCRV will also hold will also carry out a manual audit of results reflected on election returns. Since this is another way of checking for discrepancies. If there was no error or manipulation, then the digitally transmitted figures should match the data on election returns. Pinky?
Yeah, AC, you were saying a while ago that what you said, what the PPCRV is suggesting, actually rounds counter. Opposite doon sa sinabi ni Mel naman na sinasabi ng COMELEC. Again, balikan natin yung problema. Dahil nga meron talaga mga botante na sila mismo ang gustong magsubo ng balota doon sa makina, doon sa mga vote counting machines. Dahil pag sinubo mo yan, di ba, AC, lalabas yung resibo. Paglabas ng resibo, check mo yung resibo kung nag-match doon sa binoto mo. Tapos tsaka mo i-drop yung resibo na yon. So, PPCRV naman is saying, dyan, sa inyo, bantayan ng mga botante yung kanilang balota. So, ibig sabihin, tama ba, AC, kung sira ang VCM, ang sinasabi ba ng PPCRV, wag muna silang bumoto hanggang ma-repair o maayos ang vote counting machine?
Exactly, Pinky, kasi nga ang daming pumapasok na reports na hindi makaboto yung mga tao dahil hindi gumagana ang VCM. If the COMELEC is encouraging them to just go ahead and vote and entrust your ballots to the electoral board, the PPCRV is saying, mahaba pa naman yung araw, baka pwedeng makapaghintay pa kayo, no? Kasi i-guard nyo yung boto nyo, no? Iba yung ikaw pa rin ang magpapasok ng balota sa VCM and makikita mo yung election return. Because what happens, Pinky, is if you leave your ballot, they make you sign a waiver, and essentially what you're giving up is your right to check
To
or
validate.
validate
Yeah.
through the election return na, yes, to validate what your votes basically. So the PPCRV is saying if you can wait, then wait. But the problem is, since we're in the middle of a pandemic, ayun na nga, kung maraming maghihintay dahil ang daming VCM na nag-breakdown, ang problema naman doon is maiipon naman ng tao sa
Tama.
maliliit na polling precincts, Pinky.
Doon magkakaproblema, especially dahil nga may COVID at kailangan ipatupad ang social distancing. All right, maraming salamat. Thank you. AC Nichols there reporting to us. Let's go to Cebu, the most vote-rich province in the country. RPN-DY KC Cebu's Hubert Malasarte is on the line. Hubert, what's the latest there?
Salamat, Pinky, at magandang hapon. May isang konsyal sa barangay Lapu-Lapu City ang binaril patay kagabi, bisperas ng eleksyon. 3 di pa kilalang suspitsado ang tinuring ngayong mga suspect. Ang biktima sa pamamaril kagabi ay kinilalang si Jose Queros, 28 anyos, incumbent councilor sa barangay Tungasan, isang isla sa Olango, part of Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. 3 di pa kilalang mga salarin ang biglang dumating sa karinderya kung saan kumain ang biktima ng hapunan at walang awang pinagbabaril ang biktima gamit ang 9mm automatic pistol na nagresulta sa pagkamatay ng biktima. Nagtamo ng 4 na sugat ang iba't ibang parte ng katawan ni Queros. Ayon sa mga saksi, matapos ang pamamaril, nagmadaling tumakas ang mga suspects. Hindi pa na-establish sa Lapu-Lapu City Police kung election-related ba ang naturang pamamaril. Patuloy ngayon ang hot pursuit operation laban sa mga suspitsado. Ang biktima ay kilalang diehard supporter sa kampo ni Congresswoman Paz Radasa na tumakbo pagka-mayor sa Lapu-Lapu City. Meron tayong nakuhang latest update tungkol dito just a few hours ago, Pinky. Napag-alaman natin na ang grupo ni Congresswoman Paz Radasa ay nag-anunsyo na magbigay siya ng 300,000 pesos reward money para sa kung sino ang makapagbigay informasyon o makapagturo kung saan ang mga suspects upang mahuli at mabigyan hustisya ang pagkamatay ni Konsehal Queros na isang diehard supporter ni Congresswoman Paz Radasa dito sa Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. Ito si Bob Malasarte sa RPN-DYKC Cebu reporting para CNN Philippines.
Hubert, matanong ko lang, wala pang suspetsya ang police, wala pang leads, meron ba daw CCTV around the area? Meron ka bang nakalap na karagdagang impormasyon hinggil dito sa pagpatay sa konsehal?
Sa ngayon, Pinky, nahihirapan ang mga pulis kasi ang lugar kung saan nangyari itong krimen, isang isla malapit sa mainland ng Lapu-Lapu City. Ang problema, nung tinamaan ng audit, ang isla ng Ulango, wasak lahat ng mga yung mga CCTV doon. So nahihirapan ngayon ang pulis sa pagkalap ng kahit anong mga magamit nilang mga ebidensya or gamitin nila para matukoy kung sino yung mga suspitsado na nagsuot ng bonnet, yung 3.
Oo. Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo, RPN DYXC Cebu's Hubert Malasarte reporting to us from Cebu. Mula po sa Visayas, let's go to Mindanao. We have a report from Eutemio Villahermosa ng RPN DXKP Pagadian sa Zamboanga del Sur. Eutemio, kamusta ang sitwasyon dyan?
Dito sa Pagadian, Pinky, katatapos ko lang magbutar. Galing ako sa loob. wala namang insidente dito na nangyari tulad ng na-report sa kasamahan natin. Generally, at least of the moment, Pinky, peaceful yung election dito sa Pagadian City. Peaceful ang mga tao. Pumila naman at saka nag-ano sila ng social distancing dito sa area namin.
Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo, Eutemio Villa Hermosa ng RPN DXKP Pagadian, reporting mula po dyan sa Zamboanga del Sur. And we still have a couple of more hours before polling precincts close today. Just a reminder to voters that you have until 7 p.m. to cast your votes. We will be taking a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation, the Filipino Votes 2022. How has social media impacted this year's political exercise? Our senior correspondent and anchor Ruth Cabal has that story.
Expect politicians to tap social media in a big way beginning in the next elections. With COVID-19 limiting physical movement and digital becoming the new medium, candidates will woo voters mostly through a screen. Political strategist Alan Herman says social media will be the go-to platform for campaigning.
There's this thing called ATC. That's the magic formula for any elections. So that's awareness to choice. In terms of establishing and creating that awareness, definitely nothing can beat social media in terms of breadth and scope.
Herman says social media allows them to gain better insights for their campaigns. As of January 2021, 89 million Filipinos are into social media. That number includes voters. While the official campaign period is still in February, some aspirants are making their presence felt online. The unregulated medium is a greenfield for candidates.
The best that Kamala can do is regulate the expenses that you might incur by holding a social media campaign. Again, as far as content is concerned, that will still be very lightly regulated, if at all.
Besides regulation, another battlefront is disinformation. So how can social media platforms protect voters and the polls? Twitter labels tweets with misleading information. It also posts warnings, urging people to read articles before sharing them to others. Twitter bans political advertisements globally. It says the reach of political messages must be earned, not bought. Facebook and Instagram remove accounts and posts that violate guidelines. Facebook also has a fact-checking program for public posts, but politicians are not covered. The platform said censorship should be done by the users, not the tech companies. As for YouTube, it has guidelines prohibiting misleading content and deceptive practices related to elections. Despite social media's benefits, Herman says there's more to getting elected besides online campaigns.
At the end of the day, it doesn't stand on its own legs. If you're not taking your social media campaign offline, it will fail miserably.
Voters will still have to do the offline work and head to the polling precincts to choose their next set of leaders.
There are 65.8 million registered voters who can be accommodated in over 106,000 clustered precincts and more than 37,000 voting centers nationwide. This is up from the almost 62 million voters registered in 2019 polls. At least 2.8 million are first-time voters aged 18 to 19. 51% of the total voting population are women. There are 1.6 million registered overseas voters. Most of them are the Middle East and in the United States. Senior citizens comprise the biggest number of voters at more than 10.2 million. More than half of the voters are between 18 and 39 years old. The highest among them are those 22 to 24 years old and 25 to 29 years old, with 8.6 million each. In terms of numbers of voters, Calabarzon is the most vote-rich region, followed by the National Capital Region and Central Luzon. Cebu, Cavite, and Pangasinan are the top three most vote-rich provinces, while Quezon City, Manila, and Davao City are the most vote-rich cities in the country. Joining us this afternoon, we have former presidential spokesperson and political consultant Edwin Lacerda and sociologist Nicole Curata. Nicole and Edwin, so good to see you both again.
Good to see you as well.
Thank you for having us.
May 9, it's election day. I just want to start with your thoughts, overall thoughts on this election. Nicole, let's start with you.
I am expecting high voter turnout. The highest voter turnout, I think, is in 1998 when President Estrada won the presidency. That was 86%. And then 2016 was the second highest voter turnout at 84%. I am expecting the voter turnout will be higher this year. We already saw a lot of people queuing in polling precincts patiently, very early. Of course, it's very upsetting that people have to wait very long, but I think that's also an indication that people are keen and excited to vote.
Why were you saying that you're expecting a bigger voter turnout this time around?
Because this campaign season has been incredibly intense, and we can see passionate voters from different candidates, not just in the two sides that we are seeing as the front runners in this election, but we are seeing intense commitment, especially from younger people in supporting their candidates.
Edwin, what about you? Do you agree with Nicole?
I agree with Nicole. I think yesterday I felt I had a culture shock because it was so quiet. The whole so many months, starting from October, all the volunteers came out. The very notable characteristic of this campaign is the all-out volunteerism from all sides. The passion is so intense. It's the first time that people were spending their own money. People were going out, and the house-to-house was not just done on the local level, but on the national level. So there are many firsts here, and like Nicole said, we expect the turnout to be high. Last presidential elections, it was around 81.9%. So hopefully it'll be bigger despite of the existence of the pandemic.
So let's talk about that. 82% when Duterte won, 86% when ERAP won, tama ba? And what did you say, Nicole? The highest was during ERAP's time at 86%,
That's
and the
right.
second one was Pinoy's time.
Duterte.
Oh, Duterte, sorry, at 82%.
Yeah.
Okay, and then now it will seem as if it's going to be a higher turnout. Okay, of course, we're talking about percentage. Siyempre, mas marami naman po talagang botante ngayon at 65.75. Normally, we range at the 80% voter turnout. Talk about social media first and foremost, how this is becoming, well, definitely a way of life, a way of campaigning. Nicole, is it still, if we were to compare social media and, let's say, television, the traditional way of getting your news, your information, how has it changed? And what would the balance be between or versus social media and television?
Yes, Meet the Millennials had a special episode about this, and we talked to content creators. And one of their feedback is that because of social media, particularly TikTok, citizens are not just consumers of information. We are also content creators. We also create information. And that's why campaigns right now are more decentralized. The core message of a candidate cannot just come from the campaign headquarters. A lot of these campaign strategies emerge from the grassroots. And it's really a matter of ordinary citizens being creative in crafting that message for their candidates. That's why if you look at campaign paraphernalia right now, iba-iba yung design, iba-iba yung appeal. It's, I think, a product of social media because our realities are very much fragmented right now.
Okay, what about you, Edwin? Your thoughts on that?
Well, tama sabi ni Nicole, talagang decentralized na siya. And like the volunteerism, in fact, for the first few months of the Lenny campaign, there was no tagline. So kanya-kanyang tagline ang ginawa until lumabas yung gobyernong tapat. No? But by and large, it's really decentralized. But the role of TV plays a lot pa rin. In terms of going out of your echo chamber, the candidates were all out in putting out their ads, no? Because that's the only way that you can disseminate your message across outside of the echo chambers. Otherwise, you have to you will be staying within your own chamber, like social media.
Let's define echo chamber for those who might not. Tagalugin natin. Ano ba yung echo chamber? Kasi maraming nagsasabi din, Nicole and Edwin, no, for those who are in your echo chamber. Nakikita nyo lang all the time are the people who think like you, believe like you, for the most part. Hindi ba? And then it becomes a bit of a... Sometimes it becomes a little unfortunate because you stay in this chamber that doesn't really represent the whole country, the whole Philippines, all 110 million Filipinos. Define echo chamber, Edwin.
Yung sa social media kasi, ang rules ng social media is para profit basis, no, para kumita rin ng social media company, they will feed you what you want to see. So nakikita doon sa binabasa nila, nakikita ng social media company, ito ang gusto makita ni Nicole. So ito ang ibibigay natin sa kanya. Algorithm ang tinatawag doon. No? So kaya kung ikaw ay makabongbong or makaleni, ang lahat na nakikita mo kay bongbong, lahat yun na lang. O kay Lenny, nakikita mo lahat ng rally, ang laki-laki. Kaya marami sa mga taga kay Lenny, hindi naniniwala sa survey kasi sabi, 2,400 lang ang sinurvey, ang laki-laki nang nag-a-attend ng rally. So that confirms, may confirmation bias ang tinatawag no, na pag ito nakikita mo, naniniwala ka, mananalo, at yung iba, hindi ka naniniwala sa ano pang sinasabi ng iba.
Yeah.
So nagkakaroon ng, kaya hindi na nag-uusap yung dalawang kampo at nawawala yung source of truth. Wala isang one source of truth. Tayo dati, ang media lang ang may kontrolado ng news. So nakikinig tayo sa media. Ngayon wala na. So si Nicole, kung siya isang makaleni, kung anong sinabi niya, pakikinggan ko siya kasi naniniwala ako kay Lenny or kay Bongbong, ganun din ang nangyayari. Yeah. So, lumalaki ng lumalaki at lumalayo ng lumalayo ang mga kampo-kampo.
Nagkakaroon ng divide talaga. Yeah. And how can that be fixed, Nicole? Is there a way to fix that?
Yeah, I think one positive development in this campaign season is the return of house-to-house campaigning. I think that is really an eye-opener to supporters of candidates because when you go door knocking, you realize, ang dami palang magkaiba yung iniisip kaysa sa akin. And so that's why the call of many candidates is to persuade people who are not like you and meet them face-to-face. And I think that is something that is particularly phenomenal in this campaign, na parang may counterattack with the algorithm na di harap-harapan tayo, let's see people who are not like us and realize that, oh my God, iba pala yung nakikita sa reality versus
But while that is good, it's such a tedious process. Ang haba nung prosesong pagdadaanan ng house to house kaysa lumabas ka sa TikTok o kaya sa Twitter or sa Instagram or sa YouTube.
And hindi rin siya automatic conversion. So for the past week, I spent time with ordinary urban poor communities in Tacloban. Some of them actually met people who have gone house to house. And it's not automatic that they believe in what the people campaigning were saying. Sometimes yung predispositions talaga sobrang lakas. Although marami rin namang iba na na-convert because they feel special, they feel appreciated na may kumausap din sa kanila in person.
Took the time to do this, nagpagod at kinita sila. Edwin, what about you?
Yung challenge talaga ng house to house, agree ako doon, nakalabas ka ng echo chamber mo. Pero ang problema ng house to house, ang initial problema doon, scalability. Diba? Can you scale it up that fast? Fortunately, talagang nag-all out yung mga volunteers. Sige, nag-ano sila, talagang nag-all out sila, mag-house to house sila, spending their time. Ang kagandahan din, two things at work, no? Number one, summer ang walang pasok mga bata. Pangalawa, work from home. So, mas maraming taong nakakalabas, after you finish your work, di ba? Whatever that work is, you're not bound by time anyway if you're working from home. So, there were many people, volunteers, students, and working people who went out also. So, nagkaroon ng scalability to that in that regard.
Okay, pag-usapan natin to. Social media, Edwin saying something about television and the commercials, obviously, binubuhos as long as you have the money dun sa commercial. Kasi it's, well, maaalala ng tao, yung muka, yung kanta nung kandidato. So malaking tulong yon. But what about the kind of support or the backing? For example, the presidential candidates get sa local candidates. How do you, I guess, strike a balance, or what is probably more important or takes precedence? Would it be the support, let's say, of governors, congressmen, and mayors vis-a-vis social media? Edwin, go ahead.
Alam mo, baliktad ngayon. If you look at the case of Lenny, she started off with very, very few political endorsements because of the fact that she decided late. A lot of the politicians, local ones, have to make a decision. I have to run. I have to have a backer. So if you've not decided yet, I have to go with someone else. So that's why when Lenny started, there were very, very few politicians, and a lot of them were quietly pa. Nung lumaki yung declaration, nangangapa, tinan muna natin. Usually, politicians are survey yan eh. Tinan muna natin. But this time around, kahit na ayon sa survey, mababa siya, marami pa rin nag-endorse. For instance, NUP, the president of NUP, si PD Barzaga. Di ba? I mean, I think the party sinabi mag-endorse kay Bongbong, but you saw PD Barzaga there, and then you saw Mayor Jerry Treñas of Iloilo City all out na nag-ano. But by and large...
But on the flip side, you talk about governors, and yung League of Governors, sinasabi daw 80% or 90% are with BBM.
Conventionally naman talaga, we're going against convention this time around. Because conventionally, if you're leading in the surveys, politicians will go with you. But here's the thing. Based on our experience, command votes, and these are called command votes, no? You've got the market votes, yung nakaka-capture ng survey yan eh. Yung boto na walang nag-uutos sa'yo, iboto si ganito. Yung kusang boto, it's called the market votes. Ang command votes, yung dala ng politiko, utos ko yan, dali niyan.
Susunod sila.
Ang conventional niya, mga 5% lang naman ang hatak nila. So kunyari, ito yung survey mo, ang command votes kasi you don't see that in the surveys eh. So you see that on the last day, assuming there's a command vote, but by and large, our experience, mga 5% lang siya, ang dagdag.
Ang command votes. Okay, Nicole, what about you?
Actually, I would affirm that. So I spent time with communities waiting for vote buying, for example. And then they start comparing magkano yung binibigay ng bawat kandidato. But they do it out of fun, na parang, oy, si councilor ganito, wala pang binigay. Oy, si mayor, bakit mas mababa yung this year than 3 years ago? But in the end, they really vote based on their conscience. Diba?
So tatanggapin nila, pero iboboto pa rin nila yung napupusuan nila?
Exactly.
Tatanggapin lang nila yung pera?
Iba yun yung cardinal sin formula.
And remember, even the vice president was criticized for that because she also made mention of that doon sa pagtanggap ng pera, hindi ba?
Because it's a recognition of the difficulties in life eh. Di ba? Parang tama sabi ni Nicole eh, bibigyan ka ng pera pero may konsyensya ka pa rin, tutulong ka. Di ba? Parang sabihin na natin, let's be honest with it, talang hirap ang tao, lalo na sa pandemya. Eh, alam naman natin na that's the reason why ang turnout parati ng election, lalo na sa presidential. Eh, by the way, in every election, mataas ang turnout natin. Hindi tulad ng Amerika, pag midterms yan, ang baba. Dito sa Pilipinas, kahit na midterm yan or presidential, mataas ang turnout dahil may perang lumalabas.
Let's talk about surveys, Nicole. Pulse Asia has come out with a monthly survey, I believe, beginning January, no, Edwin? Since Jan, Feb, March, April.
Yes.
The last being, of course, still the front runner. Bongbong Marcos at 56% in April, unchanged from his March standing or rating of 56%. Compared to Leni Robredo in April at 23%, bumaba siya ng 1, which is, they say, part of the marginal error. 24 naman siya the month before. How does this come into play? Social media and surveys. I guess the question is, malaking tulong ba ang social media dito sa mga botante kaya't pinipili nila kung sino man yung kanilang kandidato?
Yeah, I think medyo mahirap yung surveys ngayon kasi towards May 9, hindi na weekly yung labas, kaya hindi na-track yung improvement or decline ng ibang kandidato. But I also want to say na with the studies that I've seen so far, wala naman talagang bandwagon effect yung survey. Although I don't know if some people will contest that. Kasi if that's the case, dapat presidente na si Vice President Binay ngayon, di ba? Candidates use survey to basically inform their strategies, and it also informs citizens to whether they need to work hard in convincing other people to support their candidates. But I understand then na parang Google Trends is such
I'm gonna go there also later. But I want to stick to what you said, just to follow up. You're saying that hindi naiimpluwensyahan ang botante sa lumalabas sa mga survey?
Yes, and I think the reason why some camps emphasize na, panalo na kasi top na sa survey, it's part of the bigger narrative na pag natalo, ibig sabihin na daya, look at the surveys. And we can also say that for the Robredo campaign, na look at Google Trends. We also have empirical basis to claim that we can also win these elections. So it's not really convincing people to go for the winning candidates. It's really more of establishing the narrative that if the outcomes are different from what the survey said closest to the elections, baka may dayaan.
But you're looking at such a big gap, Edwin, between Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo. I understand what Nicole is saying, but with 56 vis-a-vis 23, that's a huge gap, and you even have Pulse Asia saying this is unprecedented.
Well, totoo yun. Medyo malaki nga ang survey gap ni Bongbong at saka ni Leni. And, for me, since I've relied on surveys as a former government official, I have no reason to doubt. Pero sabi rin naman nila Ronnie Holmes snapshot in time yung mga survey. No? And I've always said, the only survey that matters, and I think the only Google trend that should matter should be on the day itself.
Today.
Kasi forget about it, pagdating sa ngayon, look at the turnout, nobody could have predicted the turnout today. So will it have an effect? And by the way, tama si Nicole Pag nagkamali ang survey, pag nagkamali ang Google Trends, anong sasabihin? May reason sila. You know what's their excuse? Apart from sabihin na natin may dayaan, ang excuse nila from a very professional angle is, the people change their minds. Which is, walang bandwagon effect nga. But that's the excuse that they always say.
But what is ano ba yung natural sa botante? In terms of percentage, ilang porsyento sa botante, ang last minute, ganun pa? Pwede pang magpalit ng desisyon. Tinatawag na, you can call them the soft votes, right?
Yung sa akin, wala akong anecdotal basis. No? I will only rely on the service. Sa akin, nakita ko, nag-harden na So, nag-harden na. So, but I don't know kung totoong nag-harden. Kasi, tama nga sabi, pwedeng magbago, pwedeng, normally, anecdotally, di ba, pag ang tao, doon na lang ako, kunyari, I'm rooting for the third or fourth. Hindi ko na ito iboboto. Yung sa una na lang o yung sa pangalawa, yun na lang iboboto. But those are all anecdotal. So, it really depends on how convincing you are. But sa akin, wala na, whatever the scientific surveys that were done, well, let's see it today, in the survey today. Hindi rin alam, for instance, wala akong nakitang survey na nag-track ng expected turnout. All we knew was the youth was all out. I mean, anecdotally, the youth were all out sa eleksyon na, sa kampanya. Sila ang nagtatrabaho, sila ang gumagalaw.
Just to follow up, I want to go to Nicole because I want to ask you something very important, of course, especially the youth vote now. But before I lose track of this, Pulse Asia has come out with this survey since January. Bongbong Marcos always led. Pulse Asia at some point was being called, or is still being called, False Asia, di ba? By critics who do not believe however their scientific approach to the surveys. Being a government official in 2010, and prior to that, obviously, alam mo naman yung takbo nito, nagkamali na ho ba ang Pulse Asia?
Sa mga malayuan, honestly, wala. In 2010, malaki yung lumang si Noy kay Villar. Pero nanalo si Noy, pero hindi na nakuha ng survey. If I recall, pumangalawa si Erap, hindi si Villar. pumangatlo si Villa. I may be wrong pa.
Yeah,
Or,
that's right.
di ba?
Nicole remembers.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So, yung mga ganong klase, yung mga last minute. For instance, si Bongbong. The last survey of Pulse Asia, panalo si Bongbong eh. Pero nag-iba rin yung tao, nakita yung...
Oh, you're talking about the vice presidency and ano?
Sa presidency, wala talaga. I mean,
Wala.
sa presidency, wala.
You don't remember, Nicole, you remember a time that Pulse Asia was incorrect?
Maybe
Wait, how about the GMA thing? Because it was a close race. Miriam,
that's
sorry,
right, yeah.
FVR and Miriam.
FVR and Miriam.
I don't remember kung ano ang survey doon, but that was close also.
Yeah.
Diba?
But that is indeed a snapshot in time, right?
Yes.
And if it's a tight race, you can't really predict what happens on the day itself. But I think they are able to track the general trends. Eh. Hindi naman yung precise average talaga. And I think for me as an academic, it's quite dangerous that we cast doubt on the integrity of credible polling bodies just because we don't like the results we are seeing. We know the credibility of the people behind it. I'm enjoying the debate of methods on social media, the social science and statisticians who are so nerdy about it. So yes, let's debate the method, pero to have the instinct to cast doubt on the integrity of credible polling firms, I think that's very
So
dangerous.
you believe in the integrity and credibility of Pulse Asia?
Absolutely.
All right, we need to take a very short break. We'll give you more updates on our complete coverage of this year's elections. Please stay with us. bringing you back our live in-depth coverage of the Filipino Votes 2022 after spending nearly 2 hours in queue. Vice President Leni Robredo finally cast her vote in Magaraw, Camarines Sur before noon. The details from our senior correspondent, Anjo Alimario. Anjo, go ahead.
That's right, Pinky. Vice President Leni Robredo, the second highest official in the land, had to fall in line for almost 2 hours just to cast her vote in Magaraw, Camarines Sur. No special treatment was given to her. Instead, she joined fellow voters who lined up in a brief interview with the media right after she voted. Robredo says she's happy that the campaign period is over, that she was given the opportunity to do everything without resorting to dirty tactics. She adds that what they have achieved during the campaign was so much more than expected. Now, on reports of malfunctioning vote counting machines and election-related violence, Robredo says it's worrisome. She points out the integrity of the elections shouldn't be tainted with these incidents. They've already put up a hotline to receive complaints as well as lawyers who are on standby. She also asked voters to report and document things that they see which are outside of the norm, at the same time appealing to authorities to show that they are on top of the situation. Now, right after voting, Robredo had lunch with her 3 daughters at a Pinalas eatery before proceeding to Amang Hinulid Chapel to pray. She also went there when she made the life-changing decision to run for president.
Anjo, balikan ko lang, no? Di ba si Vice President Robredo, nagpalit siya ng kanyang pagbobotohan, yung kanyang residency?
That's right. She transferred from Naga to Magaraw. That's why her 2 other daughters, Aika and Trisha, bumoto sila sa Naga muna before joining their mom sa Magaraw. So, yung bahay nila ngayon nasa Magaraw.
Yung bahay nila nasa Magaraw. Kaya naalala ko, Anjo, hindi ba, nung nag-change siya ng residency, dyan lumabas yung bali-balita o spekulasyon na baka tumakbo siyang gobernador, hindi ba?
Exactly. The same day that she went here, in-announce na yung bayan that they would be endorsing Robredo. Namuwi siya sa Camarines, particularly in Naga, to change her yung residence niya from Naga to Magaraw. And she also, coincidentally, she also went to Amang Hinulid Chapel that time to seek that intervention, to seek guidance, para to make that ultimate decision whether she would be running for the highest post or not.
Alam mo ba, Anjo, kung gaano kalayo yan? From Naga?
From Naga? Yeah, it's a 20-minute drive from Naga to Magaraw. Depending on the traffic, of course. Kanina magandang araw, makuha natin mga 17 minutes. But on a normal day, mga 20 to 25 minutes yung layo.
Malapit-lapit din pala. Okay. Maraming salamat, Anjo Alimario, reporting to us from Camarines Sur. We're still making the rounds in the Visayas. Our stringer Carla Doromal is covering the elections in Aklan. Carla, anong latest dyan?
Pinky, by this time, the number of voters showing up at 694 clustered precincts in Aklan continue to increase in most areas. Earlier today, the Aklan Electric Operative Substation reported power interruptions in 5 towns, particularly in Washington, Banga, Balete, Lezo, and Libacao, mostly due to transient fault. Power interruptions, however, lasted for only 10 to 15 minutes. It barely disrupted the operations of affected precincts. Meanwhile, some polling precincts here have encountered issues with vote counting machines in the first few hours. Fortunately, they were immediately resolved by the electoral boards. Aside from classrooms, Comelec Aklan also opened as polling places, multi-purpose pavements, daycare centers, barangay halls, barangay health centers, cultural and sports centers, covered court, public stage, and evacuation center. Earlier this noon, gubernatorial candidate Ibahay Mayor Jose Enrique Miraflores cast his vote at Ibahay Central School. Miraflores, who is in his 30s, is the son of the outgoing Aklan Governor Florencio Miraflores, who is retiring undefeated. The young Miraflores is up against the 3-termer Calibo Town Mayor William La Chica and the mechanical engineer Willie Tolentino. The gubernatorial race here is a battle between a veteran and 2 newcomers. Back to you, Pinky.
Thanks a lot, Carla Doromal, reporting live or reporting to us from Aklan. Let's check the situation in Surigao City. Bonifacio Binayon of RPN DXKS Surigao will give us the latest from there. Bonifacio, kamusta ang takbo ng botohan dyan?
Yes, Pinky, good afternoon. As of this moment, right here in Surigao City, Central Elementary School, Barangay Taft, Surigao City, A lot of voters still in their long queue, quietly awaiting for their shot to execute their votes. This polling place has only one clustered precinct with 746 total number of registered voters, and it was reported its BCM incurred technical problem at around 11:20 o'clock this morning. Accordingly, started in misreading until it resulted to paper jam. Thus, voters consequently stuck then in the place, and most of the old age voters were silently grumbling as a technical people trying to fix the problem. One of the affected voters was the incumbent congressman, the re-electionist for representative the 2nd Legislative District of Surigao del Norte, Robert H. Barbers, who was about to cast his votes during that time. However, after 30 minutes, the flow was effectively fixed up and the voting process smoothly continued. Pinky, so far, there are 3 VCMs throughout mainland Surigao City were reportedly having its faults, but it was immediately resolved and restored its normal operation. The overall situation right here, right now in Surigao City is calm and generally peaceful. That's it for now, Pinky. Report in Philippines, Bonifacio Binayon, Surigao City.
Thank you so much, Bonifacio Binayon of RPN DXKS Surigao. Let's now speak to PNP spokesperson Jean Fajardo on the assessment of security and conduct of the elections. Colonel, magandang hapon po sa inyo.
Magandang hapon, Ma'am Pinky.
Okay, ano hong binabantayan yung mga areas ngayon?
Sa ngayon, Ma'am, patuloy nating binabantayan yung mga areas na nandoon nga po sa tinatawag nating areas of great concern, yung tinatawag nating areas under red category, 117 po yan. And of course, yung pong 28 areas na napasa ilalim po sa COMELEC control.
Meron pong ilang mga video, no? Of course, we haven't really verified them. So, I'm really not at liberty to, well, number one, show it because kailangan po magpaalam. Ano ho yung nakikita ninyo? Meron ho ba kayong mga nakikitang problema sa Cotabato, Lanao del Sur? Meron ho bang nakarating sa inyo na kaguluhan?
So far, Ma'am, we recorded the explosion incidents in the areas of Datu Unsay, Sharif Agwak, and Datu Piang, all of Maguindanao province, Ma'am.
Ano po nangyari doon sa mga lugar na yon?
Meron pong sumabog po na isang 40mm M203 dyan po sa area ng Datu Unsay, malapit po sa Municipal Hall. 4 po yung naitala nating pagsabog dyan at meron po tayong naitalang mga na-injured na kababayan natin dyan, although hindi naman po critical. Nakalabas din po sila after getting medical attention doon po sa pinakamalapit na hospital. The same explosion incidents were also recorded, Ma'am, dyan sa Sharif Agwak. Naghagis po ng granada. Luckily, Ma'am, wala naman pong casualty doon. And yung explosion po dyan sa Datu Piang National High School po ay may 6 po tayong injured person po dyan. Habang sila po ay nag-aantay ng kanilang turn para po bumoto ay bigla na lang pong may sumabog at tinamaan po sila ng shrapnel. But they are in stable condition na po as we speak, Ma'am.
And any information on who could have been behind all these?
Right now, Ma'am, nagkakandak po ng hot pursuit operation po yung pinagsanib na puwersa po ng PNP and AFP. May isa po silang grupong tinututukan, although I'm not at liberty to reveal it so as not to preempt po yung ongoing hot pursuit operation po ng ating security forces dyan po sa probinsya po ng Maguindanao.
Mm-hmm. Ma'am, dito po sa Sultan Kudarat, may balita ho kayo dyan, nakaguluhan din?
So far, Ma'am, we are still waiting for the official report except doon sa sinasabi ko, Ma'am, na nabanggit kong explosion kanina. We also recorded shooting incident this morning dyan po sa Buluan. The same in Maguindanao also, Ma'am. May 3 po tayong naitalang patay po dyan na mga miyembro po ng mga barangay police auxiliary team at pagkasugat po ng isang katao din.
Meron po kaming report kanina na meron daw palang konsehal na napatay, incumbent councilor na pinatay on the eve of the elections by 3 individuals at nakatakas po. Meron ho ba kayong alam na information regarding this?
We are still trying to confirm the said report, Mama Pinky, but so far, ito pong mga insidente po ang pumasok na po sa election monitoring system po ng National Headquarters at kasabay pa po niyan yung iba pang mga report na pumapasok maging doon sa ibang lugar po, ma'am, maliban po dito sa nabanggit po mga insidente.
How about Marawi?
Sa Marawi, ma'am, so far, we have not received any report. Kanina, ma'am, may pumasok around 6:30 a.m. May strapping incident po na naitala dyan po sa Sumisip, Basilan. Meron pong unidentified suspect na pinaputukan po yung elementary school dyan. But based po sa report po ng provincial director natin dyan sa Basilan at sa Maguindanao, that despite itong mga na-record po nating insidente ngayong umaga ay nagtuloy-tuloy pa rin po yung butuhan sa lugar na yan at nagdagdag na po tayo, Ma'am Pinky, ng tauhan po ng Special Action Force pati po ng Philippine Army para masiguro po na hindi na po mag-i-escalate yung situation po dyan sa mga areas na yan.
Colonel, meron hubang mga lugar na hindi po natuloy ang botohan?
Sa mga na-receive po nating report so far, Ma'am Pinky, hindi natuloy kundi na-delay po yung conduct po ng election because of some reported defective po na mga vote counting machines po. Opo. At yun po ang inaalalayan ngayon ng PNP. Nagpadala na po ng mga replacement BCM po yung COMELEC at yun po yung inesportan ng ating mga kapulisan dyan, katuwang po yung service provider to ensure na makakating po doon sa mga respective polling centers po yung mga kapalit po ng mga BCM para magtuloy-tuloy po yung botohan sa mga areas po na yun.
Pero wala po kayong natatanggap na report na hindi po natuloy ang botohan so far?
So far, ma'am, wala po tayong nare-receive na report na wala pong hindi natuloy yung mga botohan, particularly dito sa mga areas of concern na ating tinututukan, ma'am.
Okay, PNP spokesperson, Police Colonel Jean Franco. Ma'am, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. And before we move on, let's check on some comments online. Tinanong po namin ang netizens, sino man ang manalo, ano ang pangarap mo para sa sambayanang Pilipino? Makakasama natin si Menchu Makapagal. Menchu, anong sagot ng mga netizens?
Alright, Pinky, ang daming mga komento na pumasok sa lahat ng ating mga social media accounts. Unahin muna natin itong sa Facebook mula kay Joe Ranyola. Ang sinasabi niya, pangarap daw niya para sa sambayan ng Pilipino, yung quality education, yung kahit daw public school, competitive ang facilities at well-trained ang teachers. Pati rin daw quality healthcare na wala ng mahihirapang makakuha ng kama sa ospital. So yan ang ating first comment mula sa Facebook. Ito naman galing kay Daniel Del Rosario. Hangad naman niya yung sapat na trabaho dito sa Pilipinas para naman daw yung mga Pilipinong magtatrabaho sa ibang bansa mag-a-abroad lang dahil gusto nila at hindi dahil sa matinding pangangailangan. From Facebook, let's move over to Twitter. This one coming in from Philly Anaconda or Ann. Pagtaas naman ng daily minimum wage ang hiling, sabi niya, wish ko lang ay mas lumiit ang living in poverty and below poverty. Sino raw ba ang may kayang mabuhay sa halagang higit kumulang 500 pesos lang sa isang araw? Another comment from Twitter, this one from Crew Forever. Ang sinasabi niya, pangarap niya na makaahon sa kahirapan ang mga Pilipino at maging mulat sa pananamantala ng mga mapang-abusong mga politiko. Now from Twitter, let's move on over to our Instagram pages. Zone 28, sino man daw ang manalo, sana gumawa ng paraan o i-push ang pagbaba ng presyo ng bilihin dahil napakamahal daw ng cost of living sa bansa kumpara sa mga nakaraang taon. At si IG user Aya Mina, safer place to live in. Yung kanyang gusto, yung confident, yung pangarap niya para sa sambayan ng Pilipino. Yung confident na raw, lumakad-lakad sa labas na hindi natatakot, better transportation, at syempre, quality of life. At yan ang komento ng ating mga netizens. Join our online conversations using the hashtag #TheFilipinoVotes. Back to you, Pinky.
Thanks a lot, Manchu. Our Melissa Lopez joins us from the Philippine International Convention Center, or PICC, for the COMELEC's canvassing of votes. Melissa, what's happening there now?
Pinky, right now we are seeing the arrival of delegates coming from various groups. So we have representatives of parties, of political parties and candidates, as well as international observers, mostly coming from the diplomatic corps. Now, the rules of the COMELEC state that at 3 p.m. today, that was a few moments ago, the 7-member COMELEC and bank should have already convened as the National Board of Canvassers. Now we're seeing last-minute preparations behind me. Earlier, just before we went to air, a chorale was serenading the guests as everyone is settling down. It's going to be a long wait until after the polls close at 7 p.m. since the National Board of Canvassers still has to wait for the certificates of canvass coming from local boards before they can actually proceed with the official counting of votes, and eventually they expect in a week's time to be able to declare the winners for the Senate and the party list race. Pinky.
Mel, so they are there as mandated, no? Sabi mo nga at 3 p.m. Let's go back to that for siguro para liwanagan tayong lahat. So what's going to happen, Mel, ay mamaya polls will close at 7 p.m., hindi ba? Ano ang mangyayari dyan sa PICC? Kasi magbibilang na ba sila? I know you explained that a while ago, pero ulitin lang natin para, kasi meron tayong PPCRV at sila nasa UST. At meron tayong COMELEC na nandyan sa PICC. Kwento mo ulit, after 7 p.m., pag sara ng mga presinto, anong mangyayari dyan?
Tama, Pinky. So the Board of Canvassers will actually convene this afternoon, but we expect na hindi muna sila makakita ng masyadong aksyon dito dahil hihintayin kasi natin na pumasok lahat ng isa-isa, pa isa-isa yan, yung certificates of canvass, na yun kasi yung formal na pagbabasihan ng official tally para magdeklara ng mga winning candidates sa 2022 elections. So ang mangyayari kasi dyan, magbibilang ang mga makina sa presinto, and then that will be transmitted through the servers of COMELEC. Una sa local, so city and municipal level, and then to the provincial level. And then from there, dyan yan pupunta dito sa national level. So medyo mas matagal. Although yung sa PPCRV, mabilis yon and parehas na server yon. But there is a specific process that needs to be followed by the National Board of Canvassers, that's the COMELEC and bank, before they can actually declare the winner. So more or less, malalaman natin sino yung leading. Pero it's the COMELEC which has the authority to declare the Senate and party list race winners. Sa Congress naman, they would be the ones with the authority to declare who is the winning presidential and vice presidential candidate. Pinky.
Okay, maraming salamat, Melissa Lopez, for that. All right, let's go to Mindanao. Cecil Aboy of RPN DXXX Zamboanga will give us an update. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. 333,750 out of the total 445,000 total registered voters in Zamboanga City are expected to cast their votes in today's synchronized local and national elections. This was the assessment or actually made with the Commission on Elections in this city. COMELEC said the city has a total number of 638 precincts. As early as 6 in the morning, Zamboangueños were already lining up in the different polling places, raising heavy rains just to exercise their right of suffrage. As of this reporting, the rain has stopped, but persistent problems with the COMELEC system still persist. Reports of names not found in the voters' list, not able to vote despite complete documents, defective VCMs were just among the complaints heard by some voters. The conduct of the election still considered generally peaceful and orderly as what the police and military considers, as there were no reports of untoward incident that could ruin the conduct of the elections. Although there was a reported case of shooting but police investigators are still digging deeper into the case to determine whether the case is a personal grudge or election-related. But no one was reportedly injured during the incident. The local COMELEC here has filed a written complaint against a reporter and the outfit for election violation. According to COMELEC Register Attorney Stephen Roy Cañete, the reporter took a picture of a shaded ballot and posted the same on the FB page of the media outfit. The outfit has taken down the post after receiving the written warning from the COMELEC. As voters troop to polling places, the city government, through the City Health Office, continues its vaccination today with one vaccination site often catering to walk-in adults 18 years and above for first, second, and booster doses. The same vaccination site caters to 5 to 11 years old for first and second doses. The city has reported 92% fully vaccinated individual as of May 4, 2022, a total of 1,336,218 doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered. Of the total doses, 675,194 are first dose, while 661,024 are second dose. Reporting for CNN Philippines, Cecil Aboy, RPN, District Zamboanga City.
Cecil Aboy of RPN DXXX Zamboanga, and I'm going to speak again to sociologist Nicole Curato and former presidential spokesperson and political consultant Edwin Lacerda. We still have a lot to talk about. So, Nicole wanted to talk about the youth vote. What is, ano bang bracket ng youth vote? But we all, I just want to say this now that the 18 to 19 voters for this election numbers almost 2.8 million. Madami sila. Ano ba ang youth vote?
Right. Well, if we look at Pulse Asia, I'm looking at 18 years old to 24. And then if we want to be a bit more generous, 25 to 44. And I think what's surprising based on the Pulse Asia data is that with a category of 18 to 24s, 71% are voting for Bongbong Marcos Jr. Of course, for some people, this raises alarm bells, but for other people, they would probably contest this. Because if we think about what the youth are concerned with, what issues they care about, it's very diverse, right? Hindi naman isang category lang yung youth na pag sinabing youth, education lang yung paki nila. I mean, it's more diverse. Some care about climate change, some care about wages, some care about COVID. So mahirap siyang isipin as just a single category. But I think what's particularly different with the 18 to 24 bracket right now is these are digital natives. This is a generation that does not know a world with no Facebook. And I think that is what's peculiar about that generation.
And it's peculiar, is it good or is it disadvantageous? Is it advantageous or disadvantageous?
I think it's a mix of both. Some would say, for example, that this generation grew up in the echo chamber generation, right? So this is the generation na nakuha nilang information nila from micro-targeted information that they get on Facebook and now on TikTok. But again, like what I said a while ago, this is also a self-aware generation. Hindi lang sila nagko-consume ng information. Kaya rin nilang mag-produce ng information when they create content. So I think before we panic na bakit ganito mag-isip yung mga kabataan ngayon, bakit sobra silang biased for a particular candidate, hindi ba dapat mas diverse yung preferences nila? I think the point there is we also need to unpack the kinds of issues that young people carry. Parang hindi pa masyadong clear what they represent.
So ulitin natin yun, Edwin. 18 to 24 years old, numbers about 11 million. Tama na, Nicole?
We have to check that.
Yeah, so here, I have it. This is from the COMELEC election records. 18 to 19 is, I'll round it off, 2.8 million. 20 to 24 is 8.6 million. So that's 2.8 plus 8.6. That's almost 12. If I'm not mistaken, 11.6 maybe million. Malaki to na mga botante. Yung first-time voters ba, Edwin, is that a lot at 2.8 million? Historically?
Kasi you have to look at it every year kasi nagre-register ka. But ganito yan eh. If you're, let's say you're 18 years old, 2003, maybe you're 19 or 19 ka or 18 or 17, basta ganon. Every year kasi yan, you know, at a given year, you have a population count. And every year, if you know the birth rate, you can more or less project.
Yeah.
Let's say, in 2003, let's say we have 80 million. So you have a 2% population birth rate. So you can count that year 1.6. So kung 2% yan, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, so may 4.8 ka every 3 years na pumapasok. Now, that's assuming everybody will register. The thing that even COMELEC admits na parang ang laki nang nag-register ng youth vote ngayon. Kasi nga siguro nga naging existential ang tingin nila dito sa election na to eh.
Actually, yung tanong ko because I wanted to know if this was a big number or I'm comparing it to where there really just a lot of first-time voters who went out and registered. That's the comparison I wanted to make when I was asking you, malaki ba tong 2.8 million?
If
so
you
you're
recall,
saying madami
COMELEC, ang sabi ng COMELEC, malaki eh. I mean, they're the repository of all this information. So mukhang, if I remember, they mentioned na malaki ang nag-register ng youth vote. But also, marami rin nag-register first time na hindi na youth din. Or at least nag-renew ng kanilang registration. Maraming ganun eh.
Inactivate nila ulit.
Inactivate nila ulit because nga, ibang, after 6 years 2 years of pandemic, talagang parang pagod na sila. They want, ito yung tinatawag na change, di ba? Gusto namin ng pagbabago kasi pagod na kami sa pandemya, pagod na kami sa hirap ng buhay. So ito yung pumapasok na we need to have a change.
But also very telling here, Nicole and Edwin, it's the 60 and above. Di ba ang senior citizen, 60? Tama ba? 60 and above, no? Not 65. 60 and above. 65 pala retirement age. So 60 and above, registered voters is at 10 million. 10.2 million, which represents about 16% of votes. Malaki yan. I'll go to the next one in terms of yung pinakamaraming botante. 60 and above is 10 million. 25 to 29 is 8.6 million voters. Ano bang mindset, Nicole and Edwin, ng mga 60 and above? I mean, in terms of voting, obviously awareness, you're obviously older, and comparing that to what? First-time voter of about 2.8 million. Nicole, go ahead. Tell us the profile. Or is that not your, meet the millennials?
I'm gonna say, malapit naman na maging senior yung mga millennials. I mean, there are aging millennials as well, like myself. But correct me if I'm wrong. But the understanding is that voting in the Philippines is not really determined by the demographic criteria of age. It's often determined by baluarte. People vote for candidates from the same region. And in the case of the 2022 election, one study actually revealed that the view of Marcos Sr. is predictive of voting behavior, meaning how people perceive the late dictator is predictive of how they will vote in this election across the board yan. So I think while it's also important to profile the boomers and the Gen Zs and millennials as voters, I think I also recognize na maraming indicators for voting preferences are medyo across the board siya.
Edwin, what about
you? If you remember also, tama rin yan. Pag nabasa mo yung sa Pulse Asia survey, it's the 60 and above na medyo mas anti-bongbong. Because pinagdaanan yung panahon na yun. Martial law. So, although malaki pa rin yung boto kay Bongbong, pero ito yung predominantly na mas lamang ang mga anti-Bongbong. Because dumaan sila sa martial law. Kaya yung mga bata ngayon, it's one generation apart. Diba? They grew up in social media, like what Nicole said. So talagang, at that time, like I was telling you before, 2010, nung nasa gobyerno kami, nakita na namin yung rehabilitation, restoration ni Marcos sa YouTube. Tahimik. It's so quiet. Below the radar, but they were putting out Marcos restoration. And you know, it was Manolo Quezon who told me, did you see this? Who's gonna believe that? Ako, syempre, I went through martial law, we went through EDSA. So my own perception was, nobody's gonna believe that. How wrong was I to realize that the younger ones who have no concept of martial law, who had never been exposed to the Marcos difficult years, had a different notion of Marcos.
Let's talk about, before we forget, Google Trends. Please explain this to us. So, it was said that Google Trends actually predicted leadership in Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines. So if I still have my numbers right, Google Trends, you have a 57% Lenny and a 23% Bongbong Marcos. My question is, ano ho ba talaga ang value ng Google Trends compared to, I'll just go straight to the point, a survey like Pulse Asia?
Yung kasi sa survey, diretso ang tanong, sinong iboboto mo? Ganun kasimple yun, di ba? You're given a questionnaire, di ba ang style ngayon ng Pulse Asia, the last survey they had, it's like a ballot na ballot style form na. You're given the ballot, you fill out who you prefer to be the president and all the other officials. So that's very clear. It's a direct query on who's your preference. On Google Trends, it's really assuming it's a search, its search is basically you want to know who this fellow is. Lenny Robredo, Bongbong Marcos, Isko Moreno. So you search. So my understanding, it aggregates all the search. So it aggregates all the searches for Lenny, but searches in and of itself are sentiment agnostic. So whatever, for instance, if you type Lenny Robredo, you don't know what's going to come out.
You don't know if it's for Lenny or against Lenny.
Or all of them will come out.
Yeah.
So we don't know, and there's really nothing there to say that it is for or against. But some people would a particular firm would rate, for instance, for instance, Facebook, engagement as preference. If you, let's say, you nag-like ka, kinlik mo yung natatawa, yung smile, that's viewed as preference. Conversion na yan.
Yeah.
Conversion na yan. So it depends on the rules that you provide for the AI. And then the AI will just aggregate it in accordance to the rules that the algorithm that you've crafted. So yung methodology nila is based on the AI rules that you craft. Pag ang Google search naman talaga, it's very aggregated yan. It's anonymized. It's big data. It doesn't distinguish a unique user. Let's say if Nicole can search.
Nicole can search 1,000 times.
1,000 times, it will be aggregated. It is no respecter of how many times.
Exactly.
It is no respecter
Nicole
of
Corato's not just one.
Yes.
It wasn't just one search of one Nicole Corato. It's 1,000 searches of the same Nicole.
I tried to look for, let's say, can we go granular? Can we do a deep dive, for instance? If someone was searching, can we go province? Yes. Can we go region, province? Yes. And I asked, can we go a street level? Hindi kaya. Hindi kaya yung... Because sa street level, let's say sa Manila, kung maghahanap ang isang tao na galing Tondo, alam mo ang social class nito. Kasi ang binabangga mo naman sa survey, meron sang ABCDE. So more or less, alam natin kung bakit ganito ang distinction. So sa Google, wala eh.
What about you, Nicole?
I will
Help us understand this.
I will just affirm what was mentioned. Google Trends actually reflect what people are interested in, but we don't know the sentiment associated to that interest. But I'm also happy to be proven wrong, just to see how it affects, or not really affects, but how it reflects the outcome of the election. I think my partiality here is to blend survey data with Google Trends and see how they speak to each other. Some people tried to attempt that, but these are still very preliminary studies. So
It's too new, to be even able to do that, because there are some people who believe that because Google Trends is saying this is the predominantly more accurate siguro data compared to Pulse Asia.
Yeah.
To that you say, let's be direct, to that you say that's wrong, Edwin?
I've never viewed, even Google Trends in their FAQ say that they're not a pollcaster. So that's where I'm looking at it. I've never used Google Trends as a predictor of votes. The other thing, by the way, but while Google Trends and surveys are being used in other countries, this is the only country na ang layo, iba ang results.
Okay.
Lahat consistent sila, aligned sila. Pero dito, baliktad. So, yun ang magandang tingnan. Bakit?
Okay, I just have one last question. We only have a minute left. Nicole, just siguro final words, how important this election is and what we should do after whoever it is wins.
So I always say in my interviews that it's not an overstatement to say that whoever will win the presidency is the person who will decide who lives or who dies in this country. This president will decide if Tokhang will continue. This president will decide our climate policy. This person will decide how we respond to disasters and how we respond to COVID. So literally, this person will decide who lives and who dies. And this is why it's the most consequential election, I think, in my lifetime.
Edwin.
I think itong election na ito, nabuhay yung civic-mindedness ng mga mamamayan. Naging mas buhay, naging mas passionate, mas naging aware sila. Siguro dapat ipagpatuloy ito because we need to let the people always speak truth to power, not just media. But kung may mali, dapat punahin ng taong bayan. Kung tama, purihin. Dapat kailangan aktibo tayo sa political involvement natin.
All right. Thank you so much. Excuse me, for joining us, political consultant, former presidential spokesperson, Edwin Lacerda, and of course, you're our resident, our sociologist, Nicole Curato. Thank you, Nicole. So good to see you again, and Edwin also, very good to see you. We'll give you more updates on our complete coverage of this year's elections at 4 p.m. Stay with CNN Philippines, news you can trust.